Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to do another behind the scenes story because I sort of enjoyed recounting the madness that was my Massage Envy commercial. But this time I decided to go all the way back to the beginning and tell the story of how I got my very first television job. Well, kind of. It's complicated, naturally, but I will try and make it as short and sweet as possible while leaving in all the juicy stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. Kids, it was the summer of 2009, and Aunt Marion was working hard in Los Angeles, pounding the pavement, and nope, that's as far as I'm going to go with that joke. That was the intro to every episode of How I Met Your Mother, in case you're wondering what is happening right now. But anyway, onto the story. So it was the summer of 2009, maybe spring, when I went in to audition for the role of Lily's bridesmaid in a flashback on How I Met Your Mother. Lily is played by Allison Hannigan, for those of you who didn't watch the show. And I was definitely excited for this one because How I Met Your Mother was one of those shows that I actually watched. I'm not a massive TV watcher, so a lot of the times when I get auditions, I haven't necessarily seen the show that I'm auditioning for. So usually the trick is you've got about 24 or 48 hours to cram in as many episodes of this show as you can in order to familiarize yourself with the tone, the characters, the writing, that sort of thing. But How I Met Your Mother was a show that I had basically seen every episode of. My roommate at the time and I used to watch the show together. So when I went in, I was like, no homework needed. I know this world. So when I went in originally to read for just a short scene, there were two characters, bridesmaid number 1 and bridesmaid number 2. They had no names, it was just two bridesmaids and a flashback scene. And the lines for the two characters were pretty banal. They were like, oh Lily, you look so pretty, or that dress looks great on you. Just, you know, kind of standard stuff like that. So I go in and I read for one of the bridesmaids, and then the casting director asks if I will read for this other character named Whitney. And Whitney is also in the scene, also a bridesmaid, but her lines are not banal at all. Whitney's lines are about how terrible the dress looks on Lily, and she's a total B-word, and Lily gets super pissed, and she stares at Whitney, and her eyes turn red, and then she blows up Whitney with her mind. A bit of magical realism, as the show would often do. And I remember stepping outside to look at Whitney's lines real quick before I went back in to read, and I remember looking at him and just like doing this little dance because the lines were so mean and it was super fun. And it may come as a surprise to you guys, but I don't really get cast as super mean people very often, so when I do get the chance to do that, it's just a delight for me. Anyway, I go back in, I do my audition as Whitney, and then I leave. And my memory is that a couple of days later, I got the call from my agent that I got it, but not the part of bridesmaid number 2. I got the part of Whitney. There was no callback or nothing, which is not that unusual when it comes to smaller parts on television shows, but I was pretty thrilled. So I was pretty excited for my first TV job, but technically, it wasn't my first TV job. The year before, I had done this sitcom pilot for ABC called Bless This Mess. It was with a stand-up comedian, and Ryan Stiles was in it, and it was super fun. It was my first time doing a sitcom taping in front of a live studio audience. Definitely learned a lot doing that, but it didn't get picked up. And to this day, I have never seen that pilot. It just went into the ether where pilots go that never get picked up. So while this wasn't technically my first TV job, it was my first TV job that I felt pretty confident was actually going to air. And like I said, it was a show that I watched and enjoyed, and I was gonna be on it, so it was super exciting. So my memory is that it was filmed on the 20th Century Fox lot, which is in West LA. So I showed up there on the day, driving onto the lot for a day's work, always gives you a little thrill. And I went to set and they gave me a dressing room. And of course I was sneakily filming little bits here and there of like my dressing room or whatnot, but I was using one of those, do you guys remember these like, what's it called? I think it was called just a flip video. It was like a little device. It was like about the size of a cell phone. And it had this little USB that like flipped out. And it was what we used to, back in the day, it was what we used to record before, you know, to film videos before our phones filmed in like good enough quality. Actually, hang on. Oh my God. I totally have it. I can't believe I have it. Does this thing work? No, it doesn't. Okay, so here it is. This is what I used. I don't know if this exact one, probably this exact one. And then you pulled, this was like the little screen. This is where you filmed. It was just the record on off, and then like your little trash button. You could like trash the video if you didn't like it. And then that popped out. It's like a relic. So anyway, yes, I'm like filming little stuff around my dressing room, and they actually left me my costume in the dressing room when I first showed up, which was actually really pretty. I thought it might be like a really ugly bridesmaid's dress because I was such a witch, but no, it was actually cute. So I got in the dress, and then they took me to hair and makeup, which was on the soundstage. So I walked over to set, and if you guys don't know the show, How I Met Your Mother had a lot of sets. Normally a sitcom like The Big Bang Theory will have just a few sets, but they're all like lined up in a row. So the cameras can just roll down and film scene to scene to scene, mostly, usually in chronological order on tape night. So like in Friends, it would be the boys' apartment, the hallway, the girls' apartment, and then the coffee house. And in most sitcoms, the majority of scenes will happen in these locations. But How I Met Your Mother had a ton of sets because they did a lot of flashback sequences. It was one of the hallmarks of the show. So the sets were basically in this S shape that curved all the way around this very large soundstage. And because they had so many sets, those sets basically took over the space where the studio audience would typically be. So despite How I Met Your Mother being filmed like a typical 3-camera sitcom, there was no live studio audience when they filmed episodes. The laugh track was piped in afterwards. So when you were on set filming, members of the crew would laugh in places where they would expect a studio audience to laugh, and later they would use the laugh track to cover up that on-set laughter. So we had to weave through all these sets to get to hair and makeup, which we eventually did. They were very nice. They gave me a very nice updo. I met the other bridesmaid, the nice one, who was going to be played by Chris Marshall, who's a super great actress, and we actually still keep in touch to this day. And in the end, they kind of ditched the bridesmaid number 2 characters. So it was in the scene, it was really Lily, Robin, and the bridesmaid number 1, and horrible Whitney. And they had changed the scene a little bit too, the dialogue. So now I think we each had one line as opposed to a few. And then we just kind of hung around for a little bit, waiting for filming to start for our scene. Because they filmed so many flashbacks in How I Met Your Mother, they had a lot more setups than they did than you would in a traditional sitcom. So they usually had to film everything pretty quickly. Normally with a sitcom, you're filming on tape night over the course of one evening, the entire episode that has been rehearsed or sometimes pre-shot. But with How I Met Your Mother, because there was no studio audience and they were filming all these flashbacks, there were so many more setups. So there was a lot more costume changes and hair and makeup changes and whatever. So they had to film much more quickly. So we didn't have to wait very long before we were ushered into the wedding suite set. And I met Pam Fryman, who is a legendary TV director, and she directed almost every episode of How I Met Your Mother. She was super nice, explained to me what the setup was going to be. And then Allison Hannigan and Kobe Smulders showed up because they were also in the scene with us. And I remember Allison was in this beautiful, elaborate, corseted wedding dress, and they obviously wanted to get her in and out of it as quickly as possible. So for the back part of it, rather than lace up all the corset, they had sort of attached it with big binder clips, like all the way down her back. So the back of it looked crazy, but the front of it looked gorgeous. So, magic of television. So I think we ran through the scene maybe once, and then we shot it, I think, 3 times. And then we had to do this push-in on me where she makes me explode. And I remember Pam walked me through it, like she was talking as they were doing the push-in, like, okay, she's staring at you, she's mad, you realize she's mad, you're like, what's happening right now? Is she doing this? And then boom, you explode. So yeah, we did that a couple of times, and then that was that. The crew flew off to go film something else, and I slinked over to craft service where all the free food was because I was super hungry and I hadn't eaten all day. And I've got this thing that as soon as I finish filming, just before filming, I can't really eat anything. I definitely eat like a bird. And as soon as we finish filming anything, I am ravenous instantly. So I definitely was hitting up that crafty before I was going home. So this was about 20 minutes or so after we had finished filming, and I'm in craft service and I'm, making my selections when Allison Hannigan comes up to the table. Now, I definitely watched Buffy with my friends. I was definitely a fan of her, so my teenage heart was beating a little faster now that the glare of performing was kind of gone. And she looked over at me and was like, "Oh my God, you were really funny. Great job." And I said, "Thanks." And she grabbed something and she walked off. And you know that scene in The Grinch where he hears the singing down in Whoville and his little Grinch heart like expands 3 sizes too big? I definitely had that moment. I was super flattered because, you know, it was a small part. It was a really short scene. It was like a blip on her radar that day. But it was a really nice thing to say, and yeah, it really made my day. It's the small kindnesses, guys. I'm such a sucker for them. They're so important because you just never really know what they mean to other people. So anyway, I went back to my dressing room, filled out some paperwork, and then it was time to go. I walked out of there with the fancy updo and the nice makeup, which always makes me laugh because I always try and dress as comfortably as possible to go to set. So I'm always in like my oldest jeans, my oldest t-shirt. And then when you leave set, you're like really fancy from the neck up, and then from the neck down, not so fancy. So yeah, I changed, I went back to my car, and home I went. I think I was on set maybe 3-4 hours. The whole thing happened pretty quickly. And yeah, a few months later, it actually came out, and I was actually still in it. And I watched it at a friend's house and with a group of friends, and it was really fun. And it was really fun to watch me explode. And this is the part where I would actually show you the episode if I could, or the scene, but I'm afraid YouTube will copyright me. So I will see if I can find if somebody else has posted it somewhere, and I will link it in the description below or maybe pin it to the comments. But if you guys have a Hulu subscription, you can definitely watch it there. It is in season 5, and the episode is called Slapsgiving 2: Revenge of the Slap. Oh, yeah. And that's the other thing about this episode. The whole reason I got into How I Met Your Mother was because of the original Slapsgiving episode. There was this recurring gag on How I Met Your Mother called Slapbed, and basically it's, you know, 2 friends betting on something. No, I'm right about this. No, I'm right about this. And basically it's you think that you are so right that you agree to a slap bet on it. And basically, if you are incorrect, the winner gets to slap the loser. This is actually funnier in the show. It sounds really violent the way that I'm describing it. But the show would build up the slap bet thing. So it had basically all kind of led up to this super slap bet between Jason Segel and Neil Patrick Harris's character, where Neil Patrick Harris lost a very big slap bet. And they decided that his punishment would be that he could either get 10 slaps in a row right now, or 5 slaps that could be doled out at any time. So Neil Patrick Harris's character opted for the 5 slaps, which is insanity. And so it was a long-running gag that his character would be sort of randomly and surprisingly slapped by Jason Segel's character at any point over the next couple of seasons. I'm a sucker for physical comedy, so the slap bet thing was always hilarious to me, and so it was extra cool that my episode was a continuation of this slap bet gag. Okay, so that's the story. I hope you guys enjoyed the tale, but tell me in the comments below, in all seriousness, you lose a slap bet. Do you take the 10 slaps in a row, or the 5 slaps that can be doled out at any time? I feel like the answer is obvious, but the show would have us believe otherwise. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Maybe I can get this thing to work again.